Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all keeping well and life is being good to you. I want to talk today on this channel about Graham Hancock's new Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse. I've completed the entire series now. Each program is only a half an hour each, and it is absolutely magnificent. I can have nothing but praise for it. I can't fault it in any way, really. And I think it's going to be considered a very important watershed in the study of ancientology or ancient mysteries or historical mysteries or pre-biblical timeline civilizations. And it's a nice punchy package, a half an hour long. It brings home the bacon really on what you need to know, and more importantly, it opens up. There's still a lot of people out there who are not aware of this stuff. They're not aware of things like Göbekli Tepe and other places that around the world that do ask these fundamental questions: is our history right or wrong? And so it'll open up a whole new world into that, and that can only be good for people like myself and others in similar fields who are interested in ancient mysteries. It can only be a good thing for us. Now, on top of all this, I'm always amazed by the man's energy. I think the man is going on 70 and he still scuba dives, which is quite it's not dangerous, but it's a risky enough thing when you get over 50. And he's had health scares recent past. And so, I'm amazed by that. So I'm glad that he got his health got better again to the point where he could kind of produce his opus in this series, because people like me and people like us who are interested in ancient mysteries and get out there and explore these places ourselves, we owe him a great debt. We do. And I think it's almost like the series is almost like a fitting tribute. Now, I've heard people say things like, well, it's on Netflix, well, so what? Perhaps Netflix just see money, that's what they say. There's people at Netflix who are smart enough to know this stuff is very popular amongst a certain crowd. We could make money from it. It's as simple as that. And we could probably make a new audience to bring into that. So that's why it's on there. It's just purely money, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, there has been a huge backlash, and this is what this video is really about. The in the series, Graham Hancock unashamedly throws down the gauntlet to mainstream archaeology, quite rightly too. And this is a highly important thing because it's something I have a problem with too as well. I think any of us who's looked into the ancient past, the megaliths and so on, the stories things don't make sense. The out of Babylon timeline and all that stuff, and everything having to basically fit in with the discovery of agriculture. And Graham Hancock's contention is, and it has been for a long time in his books and everything, that there was a rediscovery of agriculture. Now, this is actually quite common in folklore all over the world, of people who came from a destroyed homeland and brought new methods of agriculture. And even Tolkien even writes about this back in the 1950s. So we have a situation where he's being savaged by mainstream archaeology, and he probably did it for that reason, because it's kind of like a thing that, you want to really show the world what you're dealing with, true nature of your enemy, is to coax them out into the open, and then people can see them for what they are, and make their own minds up. And right now, the mainstream academia people are looking like absolute lunatics now, and nasty and vicious. Now, I saw one comment the other day where this guy was literally losing his mind, and he wasn't anyone famous or anything. And he said, "Oh, the same old story. He's pushing white supremacy and racism again. He's using his white nationalism to promote this show's agenda." Now, Graham Hancock has been married to a black lady for decades. So, I mean, it's beyond offensive what that guy wrote. But I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm seeing it a lot. It's amazing how these people on the left in the mainstream, which all lefties are all mainstream anyway, There's none of them who are on the edge or anything like that, or in the margins. They're all completely straight laced, white bread, and they are openly stating things like that the show has a white nationalist angle, and it's beyond offensive considering the man has been married to a black lady for decades. So this is what these people are like. So this is how low they'll go. They've no decency in them, and especially the cozy academic cushy consensus is like that too. Now the Guardian, through a guy called with the bizarre name of Stuart Heritage, launched a scathing attack on the show Ancient Apocalypse, claiming it to be the most dangerous program on TV. I just, we live in a world fraught with all kinds of dangers, and that's the most dangerous thing in the mind of these people. And that's definitely someone who's writing on behalf of his Oxbridge lovies, who's, are all jealous of the success. This is one of the things that happens. Jealousy is an unbelievable force on this planet. And petty jealousy, it can turn to like murderous rage and hatred. And you're seeing, I've experienced it myself, and now you're seeing it with these types, these academic types. Now, let me explain to you first of all what's wrong with academia, archaeology to begin with, and why it's one of the things that all these people are so quick to call Ancient Apocalypse dangerous, never look at their own profession. Now, I've been to enough ancient sites around the world, and often when you're there, there's archaeological digs going on. So there's always like this archaeological field work going on. And invariably, if you look into you stare into a trench, especially in Europe, and I don't know how it is in North America, but especially in Europe, you stare into a trench, and there's 10 people in there, 9 of them will be women. Nine of the people in that trench will be women digging out through the layers, and there might be 1 or 2 guys, but it's always young women. Archaeology appeals to females in a very idealistic way. They're in a very healthy idealistic way, I might add. And I'm not saying the fellas don't either, but I'm just saying that's what seems the women I've met who are drawn to it, and they're basically skivvies in the ditch. And you stand above the ditch. There stands the site archaeologist, who's the boss man, who meets the visitors and makes sure that the archaeological students below are digging the right stuff and everything. And it's always a fella. It's always a man. It's always a white male. So you want to talk about like a white privilege position, archaeology? It's full of it. And so there's all the women in the trench, the young students, and the guy above them, looking down at them and telling them to make sure they're doing the right thing. So I know that's all part of it as well. But like it's funny how many I would say it's up to 5 now. I know 5 women who have graduated in archaeology, either from Unis College and IT and techs, and in some level of degree, some level of archaeological thing, and not one of them is working in the field. The education destroyed their love of the subject, and I've heard numerous stories of they'd be searching through somewhere here in Ireland. They'd be searching through some layer, and they would find thing that was way too old, and they 1 or 2 things, and they say, well, this doesn't make any sense. This is like hundreds, maybe thousands of years too early. And the archaeologist will say, I'll put it in that box over there as an anomaly, and then it's never heard of ever again. It's just because it doesn't suit the record. And I've heard that numerous times, and I've often heard numerous stories of sexism of like older archaeologists, like you're probably retired, most of them ones now, who will be openly saying that women don't know this and women don't know that. This is the kind of thing that was going on, and yet the Guardian never brings that stuff up, and that's not supposed to be their forte. Now, there's all kinds of archaeology as well. It's not always ancient archaeology, and I know people who have gone through the system and gotten jobs, but the majority of people I know who went through the system and did not get jobs in archaeology is enormous. male and female. But the ones that do get it, they're fortunate, and a lot of it's to do things like site. See, it's not all ancient stuff. It might be things like early industrial archaeology, like mills and linen factories and salt production places and that kind of thing, kilns, lime mills, lime kilns, and so when they're building a motorway or a shopping centre, these archaeologists investigate the site, and it's generally not always ancient stuff. So remember, there's archaeology is all kinds of things. There's like World War II archaeology and stuff like that, bombers and planes that were shot down, things like that, battlefields. So the archaeological field is not a particularly nice place in many ways, from what I've been told. The academic side of it is not very pleasant, at least not here in Ireland by the sound of it. Now, there are people that do not manage to get jobs in it, and they do love it, but they love the travelling around the country and things like that. And, they're basically working for groups like the National Roads Authority and things like that on board Penala and any kind of group here involved in building and site works and stuff like that, as big building projects, infrastructure projects. And that's basically it. I mean, you look at Neil Oliver, he's not involved in it anymore, and he's, lots of people not involved. And they go on to write books, or they go off on their own. Like Neil Rushton, his stuff is, I don't think Neil's involved in archaeology anymore, but he's out there writing articles and books from the Dead But Dreaming blog on fairies and things like that. You have Neil Oliver, and look, a lot of them just seem to like pull out and go off and do their own thing. And but it's tragic that a lot of the younger women who are brought into that field are, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about exploring the past, are all like working in offices and other kinds of jobs when they graduate. And I know one girl who's a music teacher, and she's openly told me that she would never work in archaeology because it was such a soul destroying experience dealing with the lead archaeologists. And as I said, things have been hidden and things have been missing. That anomalies have a habit of vanishing. And it's all about keeping the consensus and keeping the cozy, a boys' club. It really is very much a boys' club. Now, that's not to say there's not like really nice archaeologists out there. And there's also archaeologists who told me things off record that they would never publish in a peer-reviewed paper or mention on the radio or TV, but they've said it to me. I mean, I have to say I have met archaeologists who have given them my version of things, and they've been very sympathetic. I don't think I've ever been like spoken down to, but they're trapped as well. Even though they're nice people, they're trapped as well. They can't say anything about it. So it seems to me there's a hell of a lot of. It seems to me there's an archaeology psyop going on, and I'll tell you why. If Graham Hancock had have made that TV series saying these ancient structures are made by aliens from space, they would have left him alone. It's it's the classic thing that when you're over the target, that's when you get some flack. And the flack that Graham Hancock is getting over Ancient Apocalypse tells me he's definitely over the target. And it's been going on for years, but it's really visceral and vicious now because he's instead of reaching people like us who already have an interest in this stuff, he's the average Joe public is now taking an interest in it. And this seems to be really worrying them. Because remember, these timelines and these are all linchpinned upon their own consensus, and nothing can be put in there to change that, because there's too many jobs involved in it. There's too many, There's also a lot of this came out of religion, church people. You saw my Atlantis documentary with Neil MacDonald. Neil mentions in the film that the Archbishop Usher and all the universities, these were all, it's in the book as well. We mentioned them, that these were all, church people, and that ultimately led to where drew a line to where archaeology is today, trying to fit within that churchy paradigm. And so there's a big element of that too. You're challenging the whole fundamentals of this fake Western civilization they've given us when you start messing with the historical timeline. So he's a dangerous man in that sense. He's not dangerous to me or you or ordinary people. He's dangerous to the establishment. Now, that's why they're attacking him. Now, a few observations about the series itself. I really like the use of graphics, particularly those sans serif. I think it's the font is like an impact font that they show the names of the locations. You get an aerial shot of the location, and then they punch a big large font on top of it, naming it. Göbekli Tepe or whatever the place is, and that's really fascinating, very well done, very very strong impact for people who want to take notes, who are learning all this stuff. They can jot that name down and then go and learn more. I like that aspect of it. It's almost like a filing cabinet, and the music I said is great. The a refined and genteel almost use of drones. You can use drones have been overused in the stupidest of ways, but they get them just right. You notice in a lot of my stuff, I have drone footage, but I tend to keep it to a minimum because that can be overkill as well. That kind of thing. There's his sort of like monologues at the beginning, very well done. I like that. I like the way he ends the show with a kind of a teaser for the next one, like it's time to talk about Atlantis. Like that was great. Like that kind of thing. It's very exciting. Negative criticism, it's too short, but that's okay. It's horses for courses again. There'll probably be other series coming down the road, but again, it's nice, short, tight info punches. But I would like to see a bit more of that kind of thing. Uh, he needs to name places a little bit more, maybe. Like when he went to Dar Galam in Malta, which I've been to a few times myself, he went the short walk down the road to St. George's Bay, and showed him beside one of the cart ruts going into St. George's Bay. Now I've been there a good few times, and there's a cafe right beside that cart rut I like to actually go to. It's a nice Italian lady runs it, and then walk over and look at hang around, look at and examine the cart ruts with the waves lapping on them. You should have said the name of that. But another critique is the temples of Malta and the movement of the star Sirius. I mean, look, everything's open for debate, and everybody has a flavour to put into the pot. I don't know if I bought that one so much that they would actually move. I mean, the precession of the equinox. I tend to think in his work in general tends to, but he could be, he's probably right too, too much into it sometimes, and I find it hard to believe that the orientations are always connected with stars. You know, just because some places are connected with solar and celestial objects, we have a tendency to think they all are. They all are. That's not necessarily true. That I don't think. That all started in the '60s. That stuff, that everything was like altered. Connected to stars and everything. Yet some are, but I don't know. I don't think all are. And that the Maltese temples orientating themselves at that, I really don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean the woman's concept is a very well thought out and rational idea, but I just find that one a bit, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to me. I know it sounds weird, but a lot of my own observations about like traveling around to different sites is how is this making me feel, that kind of thing. And that didn't feel right to me, although it's an interesting theory. I didn't enjoy the North American one. I find the sort of like pre-Columbian, America BC thing. I find that stuff quite boring. I'm not as there's nothing in North America. I don't think there is. I guess there are things, but they're certainly nowhere near as interesting as what you get in Central and South America, and they're certainly not as interesting as anything you get in Europe or Asia. And I think a lot of that has to do with North America was under the ice sheets, and quite simply it was a wilderness and a land without people for so much of its history. And I really do think it's a place where people, I mean, there's still so many open things. It's like, why is South America? You see, if people came to the Americas across the Bering Straits, then surely the development of America in terms of its archaeological heritage would be from north going south. But again, we find the oldest and most impressive stuff in the south, in Peru and so on, and Brazil, and down around that part of the world, and that has to ask questions about Lemuria, in terms of being the mother culture of that, in terms of Atlantis being the reason why the megaliths on the west coast of Ireland and places like Orkney, north of Scotland, are the oldest ones in Europe, not the ones closer to Mesopotamia. But they're minor gripes, mostly based on my interest. I don't find the America BC stuff interesting at all. It just doesn't do anything for me. And I don't think there's really that much evidence. Of course, even though there's great, interesting stuff like the Serpent Mound and so on. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I have to say that Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse is fantastic. It's a watershed. I'm glad it exists. And like I said, it was about alien spacemen building the ancient sites. They wouldn't have a problem with it. But when that's because they know that's all nonsense. But when you start saying something that might be real and danger to them, that's when they come after you. So yeah, highly recommended. And thank you, Graham Hancock, and well done.